Hi everybody, welcome to the Finance This Property That podcast. My name is Dion Fernandes and I am a mortgage planner and finance professional. My goal is to empower financial legacies for generations, and I look to do this by using my over 13 years experience in finance and having special guest speakers like financial planners, accountants, buyer's agents, family lawyers who are experts in their field to provide knowledge and free education. And without further ado, let's get into our episode today. Welcome everybody to the Finance This Property That podcast, where we look to empower financial legacies for generations. We do this by giving you free education from myself, my time and knowledge and expertise in the finance and property industry. But I also bring in key people that are experts in their field, also in the finance and property sectors. Today, I have the amazing Jill from The Law People. She is a family law expert. Now, I've known Jill for a little while, and yes, the work she does and how passionate she is about helping people really resonates with myself and what I do. She does also look to empower people to make the right decisions for themselves by giving them the information and leading them to doing so. Now, welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Dion.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy just like everyone else, but I really wanted you on here because, you know, I'm seeing a lot of, separations and people going through family struggles. I've been through that myself, just like many people. And I just thought it'd be really key to have someone like yourself on here to talk about all that sort of stuff, right? But before we get into it, really love to know a little bit about you, your background, your family, and tell us about The Law People, because I know that you've just moved premises. You didn't get the place I wanted you to get with the basketball court. Come on, man. But, you know, you're growing your business and to help more people. So take it away. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you. Well, yes, family lawyer, accredited family law specialist. So a little bit different to being just a family lawyer. So in order to become an accredited specialist, you have to go through extensive study and exams, interviews to attain accreditation. So there's something like 2.7% of solicitors, lawyers, are accredited specialists through the Law Society.
Oh, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
I just thought you could just go into, this is what you do.
No, so so that means that I am absolutely an expert in particularly family law.
Yeah, because hang on a sec, you were an accountant before that
Correct.
too, weren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, which actually probably helped you with family law too, right?
Yeah, it's great in family law because, like you, I see all the nitty-gritty about someone's life. I ask for their financial statements for their businesses, their personal tax stuff, and having that, I worked as an accountant for 6 years, having that background just gives me deeper insight, and I can identify risks to them that perhaps other lawyers who don't have that background in accounting have. So, yes, gives me that opportunity, but it also gives me insight to refer people on to other people because I just identify gaps.
Key areas of improvement. So what got you, why accounting to family law to The Law People where it is now? Tell me.
Accounting. So I finished up in my accounting career nearly 16 years ago. Whoa. Believe it?
Yeah.
At a time when my youngest daughter was born, and at that point, work from home was not an option in professional services. So I had this little baby at home who was a wonderful sleeper, feeder, all the things, and I had a lot of time on my hands and decided I always wanted to do a law degree, so why not now? So I went back and studied law.
Great.
So I did that while I had my children, while they were young, and then when the youngest one started school is when I went back to work full-time as a lawyer.
And it's someone else's practice.
Exactly. First job was as a tax lawyer.
Oh,
I was pretty excited about
pretty
that.
normal,
Yep,
right? Accountant
thought that
tax,
was my path. No, not for me. I like people, and tax law typically doesn't lend to much interaction with people. So going through my own separation at the same time as well. So I spoke to the family lawyer I was using, who was also an accredited specialist, really well known in Brisbane, and spoke with him about just sort of canvassing what could I do in the law, and it kind of came out, well, maybe family law is actually a good spot for me. Hadn't really given it much thought. So landed in family law.
Wow.
Never looked back. I was literally born to be a family lawyer. I am convinced of that.
Yep. And I guess, you eventually find your path. It's taken me 15 years in the same industry to figure out what I like. Never wanted to do lending either. So, and here we are. Like, it's very different. But you've gone from working with someone to your own business, which is the Law People.
Correct.
You're very well known as well. We talk about you guys a lot at Emerge. How did the Law People come about?
Law People came about, so the name law, obviously we're lawyers. People, we're just everyday people, happen to be lawyers helping other people. That's the name.
That's pretty simple.
Sounds pretty simple. Came about on the back of I've worked in wonderful firms, got wonderful training from serious experts all around the country. But I wanted to do it a little bit differently. I wanted to have a firm that I thought was unique in the market, where we have a safe place for lawyers to rock up, do their work, and go home and have a life as well, but also provide that top-notch expert family law advice.
Yeah, and that's really key, right? Yeah, when, going through separation myself, you're paying someone so much to do a key part. Basically, you're going through such a traumatic time in your life. You want that skill, that person. You want that confidence that that you're going to get a good job. Now, I've heard some of the stories that the ladies in your office of saying, they're up till 4 a.m., have a bit of sleep, and they're back in the office. Obviously, it's not all like that.
No,
that
is part of the job sometimes. But it shouldn't be the norm.
No.
It's the exception. But that is the job sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and the court has deadlines for good reason. But that just means that we look at it with swings and roundabouts. So yes, sometimes you have to dig deep, prepare for court, have to pull a late night, but then that means next opportunity where you can take an early mark, do that.
Yeah, and that's, again, you're resonating with me there because, at Emerge, that literally what we're allowed to do. It's you do that. I know I was up till midnight last night trying to get things done because I knew that I was going to be here recording all day. But look, man, that's great that you've got that the staff there. That's what's going to keep people in jobs, right?
Yeah, it's so
You've
great.
got to love where you work. You don't want to wake up going, I don't want to go to work.
So our practice, we've grown now. We've got a team of 13.
From what did you start with?
Me.
You? Yep.
Me. There's a
1 to 13.
1 to 13, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And
wow.
growing.
And a new premises.
New premises.
That doesn't have a basketball court.
No.
But it's pretty close to all the other amenities.
Yeah, it's
in the
amazing.
city. So yeah, you've got a really good location. I'm sorry I missed your open house the other week.
That's
but
okay.
I will try to get to the next one. I might just even come and pop by and say hi.
Come for a coffee.
I'll bring a cake like I did to Kelly's office.
Nice.
I'm sure that the ladies will like that. But look, talking about family law, right? Really high level, what is family law?
So family law, a lot of people, when I see them, they want to talk about their divorce. Okay. So they like.
Doesn't that happen at the end?
Well, yes. That's because you've done the journey.
Yeah, right. True,
you know
true,
that.
True. Yeah.
So the divorce is almost the bit at the end, whereas family law is financial separation. Custody arrangements. We don't use the word custody in Australia, but that's typically the word that resonates with most people. It's child support, so the money arrangements for children post-separation. Thing called spousal maintenance. So if there's a disparity in income and there's a higher income earner. These are all family law things that we have in our toolkit to help people close out that last chapter, get formalised so that they're set up to move forward. The other part of family law is people refer to prenups. So the technical name is financial agreement, but that's an agreement that two people will enter into during, like before a relationship, during or after. I've done a few cool during relationship agreements where they think things are on the cards, like the relationship's at risk.
Yeah, right.
But we're trying to make it work, but we're realistic that it might not. So let's get an agreement in place now while we still kind of like each other.
Yeah.
That has some really great outcomes, because I've had agreements drafted like that where then the relationship hasn't lasted. Then you can just pick that up and implement it.
Yeah, because I think about, and obviously being through it, it must be, it is rewarding, but man, it just must be sometimes really hard to go through. Like, how do you sort of separate how do you keep it down the line?
Yeah, good question. It's a
hard.
skill. It's something that you learn. I tell all early career lawyers that join our team, or anyone that I meet, the first year of practice is so hard, because that is the skill that you have to learn, because you don't end up in family law because you probably do like the law, but you want to help people. That's why you do this job. So that first year where it's really hard working out where's the boundary, where do I stop? Something I say to all my clients is, my job is to give you the legal advice. Yes, I'll give you what my view is, but ultimately they're in charge of their destiny.
Yeah,
so
you're the one signing the piece of paper, and you need to have that understanding.
So that, over the years, that's what's given me real clarity in, I'm part of facilitating them transition through this period. My job is to give the advice, help, support, answer questions, but ultimately they're in charge.
Yeah, that's
not
a great
my decision.
Explanation.
Yeah,
because like I said, being through it, it's tough, right? And it's good to, you're on their side.
Yeah, 100%.
And you're working for them, but you're also, you can't force anyone to it. You've just got to make sure that they understand, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I like what you said about the, you're working through the prenup or the financial agreement side of things. I think, more and more now, especially if someone's going into another relationship, you've just got out of one and you potentially have started from nothing, and you've built yourself back up, and you sort of don't want to lose that, or the same thing, they may have like, well, I don't want someone else taking all my hard work. So,
absolutely. Yeah. The other financial agreements we're seeing, and it's in the media a lot at the moment, this transfer of wealth.
Okay.
So you probably see that a bit as well, in terms of what's happening is we've got mum and dad being the bank.
Yeah.
Lending to their children or gifting fairly substantial cash to get into the property market.
Yeah, happening and then more and more.
Yep. Mum and dad are saying, ooh, what happens then when someone comes in? That money is 100% at risk.
Wow.
In terms of a future family law situation.
Even though that they're like, it's got nothing to
100%.
Yeah, because it's part of the pool, overall asset pool, right? Well, so we do, does that work the same when when they don't give them cash, it's a 80, so my typical scenario would be son or daughter with their partner wants to buy a property, mum and dad said, yep, cool, we'll put our property up as security, 80% against the property, and then 20% plus costs, or 20% against the purchased property and mum and dad's property. In a separation, is mum and dad's property at risk in there, or is it only if they just give cash?
Cash in terms of like balance sheet items.
Yep.
Because then that's the actual money is
tangible.
moved.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The at risk is, that would be what happens if they separate and then one party doesn't pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
And then the other
happens. It happens.
Then, mum and dad are really at risk because they've put in this guarantor.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, yes. In terms of like a balance sheet item, no, it's not going to form part of the property pool per se, but there is exposure.
Yeah, right, yeah. Okay, so there's exposure in the sense that well, you've gone from 2 incomes. That's how it got approved to 1 income. Yeah, mum and dad may have to help, right? Or you just sell the property and hopefully you don't sell it for a loss.
Well, yeah. And we've been lucky in the recent times.
Yeah.
Not many properties are selling for a loss.
Yeah.
Had a few anomalies lately though. Really
Yeah.
strange. I haven't seen properties in the last few years that are selling for less than their purchase price.
Yep.
But there's been a few where people just get super eager, super keen, and they think, oh, well, property market, I'll just recover. They buy something together, then they separate soon after, and they've overpaid.
They've overcapitalised.
Overcapitalised.
Yeah.
And then we're dealing with who's going to share what a portion of that loss.
Yeah.
So that's where if mum and dad have propped that up, it's a real problem.
Yeah. I know at Emerge what we do to protect. We're very much about protecting mum and dad and protecting our clients as the borrowers. Well, they're all our clients, right? But we actually review every 6 months every guarantor loan.
Yeah.
One for price, one for value as well, because if the value's gone up, we may be able to reapportion some of the debt and reduce the risk on mum and dad. And I think that's really key as well, especially, and even if mum and I've had clients that, mum and dad have given us a bit of money, can we take some equity out? And, we don't pay them back, but we'd like to just give them the money back so we're not feeling like we owe them.
Yeah.
And that's a really great, that's also a good conversation that we sort of have. Yes, you're giving the money, but, really if, you have the option to pay them back should you wish to, especially if mum and dad end up struggling, right? But
absolutely.
And that's key. I didn't realize the cash component. So has something like that come up recently for you, where the mum and dad have given cash, and
Happens
how do
all the time.
protect? How do you protect someone from that?
How you formalise it. So
Okay.
Yeah, largely those kinds of deals will be considered a gift.
Yes.
Which then doesn't land on the balance sheet, right?
Yes.
So mum and dad don't sit as a liability to just automatically get paid back,
Yes.
because it then forms the property pool of the two people who are separating.
Yep.
And then mum and dad are like, whoa. That's not, we thought we were getting the money back. But then that money's at risk and then it comes out of that one party whose parents it is, they take their portion of the family law settlement and then they feel like they've got a moral obligation to pay their parents back. So then they ultimately end up with less. Okay. So how we work with awesome commercial lawyers who would document that agreement, formalise it. So you need formalised and evidence of repayments, like heavily documented, so that if it does end up being a dispute later, there's no ambiguity that they were essentially the second bank instead of, oh, no, that was always meant to be a gift. They said that it just ends up in he said, she said, and that's where you end up with
end up with the dispute and
increased legal fees and
So basically spend a bit of money up front to save quite a lot of money and heartache at the end. Great. So that's probably something I'll start talking more to, especially when it's cash. It's easy. It's more like how do we take, when it's a security, we're just, how do we need to get you in a position to remove that. You need to focus on paying this debt down so we can move mum and dad out. Yeah. Right. Accelerated payment strategy, stuff like that. You've talked about property pool, things like that. It's quite key. When you're going through a separation, you've got the financial sort of separation. How does if people own a property together and one person's going to buy it, what are, I guess, some of the advantages of actually doing a proper financial agreement, right? As opposed to just going, we'll just do it ourselves.
Yeah, and it's a really
You must see that, though. You must see that.
So often. So often. And look, quite frankly, I don't enjoy seeing lawyers myself, so I get it.
Yeah.
Like, we're not that scary, though. And so what happens is people don't like the idea of seeing a lawyer, and I think this comes from the fact that our legal system in Australia is an adversarial system. So we have evidence that one person leads for their case and the other person leads their evidence, and you have a fight about it to see who's got the best evidence. So it's adversarial. Yep. That's why the legal system is, and it works. That's what we have in Australia. So people, the idea of seeing a lawyer for something when they've got an agreement, we're all good, is kind of offensive to them. Like, I don't need to lawyer up. Whereas you don't have to lawyer up.
It's just lawyer up just sounds so aggressive. It's just like, no, you're not lawyering up, just getting advice on how to.
But there's a real misconception that seeing a lawyer is lawyering up, and it doesn't have to be like that as well. Oh, we can do the lawyer up stage if we need to. But that's for such a small amount of – the court is there for a very few cases that actually need the court. So absolutely benefit in seeing a lawyer when you've got an agreement between the two of you is stamp duty.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So great, we've decided, husband and wife say, worked out all the numbers, this person's going to refinance, get a bit more cash to pay out the other one.
Yep.
That means that person comes off the title. That is a stamp duty event.
Yep, triggers that event, yep.
Trigger that. They will pay stamp duty on that transaction unless they have a consent order from Federal Circuit and Family Court or a financial agreement.
Yep, and it's got to be stamped.
Stamped.
Yep.
So that in itself, the money that you spend on getting the agreement is more often than not a whole lot less than the stamp duty. But I've still had people over the years that, despite that, would happily pay the stamp duty to avoid just engaging with lawyers. So I'm serious about breaking that down and saying we're not that scary.
You have the conversation, right? Like I'm assuming, like, I mean, it's like us. When you want to, you have the initial conversation. You're just getting an understanding of what you're looking to do, what the motivations are, and what help you actually need. That's my first 15-minute conversation. I'm assuming it's very similar.
Yep.
And then you decide what you want to do, and then if you engage, then our engagement's a little different to yours, but that's when you decide if you're adding value. I mean, I wouldn't want to pay stamp duty twice. Yeah, but also, does it also, if you do it yourself, there are other implications as well, right? Like that, there's more than just paying the stamp duty. I have a long list
of horror stories for not formalising a settlement.
Yep.
Means that you haven't formalised a settlement.
Yep.
And either party, I mean, there's time limitations and hurdles that people might need to jump through. There are many cases about it. Worst case I've had is 15 years after they did their kitchen table settlement, that's what I call them, kitchen table deal. 15 years later, the wife had run out of money, and because they didn't do a super split, she went back to the husband and said, by the way, I want some of the super. I acted for her. We had an absolutely cracking day in court. She got $1 million 15 years later.
Oh, wow.
So I would not have liked to have been the husband in that case.
Yeah.
But that is because it was not formalised 15 years ago.
And it wouldn't have, and if you were amicable then, like in my head.
But so many things change.
I know, but if you're amicable then, you should have just ticked the box and just
100%.
done it, got the advice. Because I know, like, even though, like, if you go and formalise something, let's say I approach you, you formalise it, I still have to hand it to the other party. They still have to still get independent advice because you can't represent both people, right?
Correct. Can't act for both people.
Yep.
In orders that go off to the court where they stamp them, that you don't have to have legal representation. So if they're amicable, I'll often say to people, look, the orders have been drafted, obviously, for the client that I represent. Absolutely up to the other person to go and get independent legal advice, but you don't have to.
Yep.
So they go to the court. There's a registrar in the court who's also an experienced family law lawyer.
Yep.
And they run through the whole case, and they won't put the stamp on it unless they agree that it is a term we use as just and equitable, which is essentially fair.
Yep.
So you kind of get that double checking.
Yeah, right, yeah. So you can't, that will obviously avoid people just pulling the wool over someone's eyes. And, again, there's a lot of stuff going out there, like the coercive control stuff and that sort of is the stopgap because, that
Well,
could
that's it.
happen, right? Like
Yep.
there's plenty of cases, I guess, that are out there. What are some of the other things, I guess, the protection pieces that people think that, well, if I don't pay for this, yeah, we can just do it on the cheap. But then there are what other implications could come back later? Is there any?
Yeah, the financial uncertainty.
Yep.
Parenting, so that we're talking, I know, mainly talking about financial stuff, but the parenting, not all cases need parenting orders. There's lots of families that navigate successfully without orders, and sometimes orders can do more damage,
Yep.
actually.
Yep.
But so it's case by case on that one.
And it's quite funny, though, because the orders are there, right? They're there, but
You can still,
they're a guide.
well, that's
right?
it. I talk about them being your fallback position.
Yeah.
So you can still agree outside of them, but at any point you then end up having some kind of disagreement.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, well, that's our fallback. That's what we do when we can't agree otherwise.
Yeah, because the orders that may be here done like 5 years ago, your child's grown up,
Yeah.
different stage. Once they're teenagers, the orders are probably not relevant. Like
Yeah.
and you'd hope that you'd still be able to co-parent properly for and it's your child's first as opposed to yourself. And I think there's a lot of clients I've seen that are in that just going, oh yeah, well, we've got orders, but we just go
They don't quite
against.
suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just make our changes, but and we talk about it. But I think getting to that stage is takes a bit of work, right?
Does take work.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
You're talking about the parenting orders, but also, back to your financial agreements. I guess if you're having that conversation early in your relationship and you're both understanding, and that's that open communication, I guess if someone comes up to you and goes, hey, we're both agreeing on this and we're looking at it, you're thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, be going, cool. You're probably not going to come back and see me for a separation, and you're doing the right thing now.
100%. I really like seeing those clients that come to me and they're like, we've got a deal. We've spoken about it. That's so great. We jump in, we formalize it. It's a pretty quick process.
Yeah.
And they're the clients, that you don't hear a lot of those stories from me because they're not the horror stories.
No.
Yeah.
But I guess the good news is around like, hey, look, this is what I like about, the way you look at it. It's you're not there to, and again, back to that sort of misconception about lawyers are there to like gouge you for money, and every time you send an email, it's this and that. You're there to go, hey, look, if you do this, it'll cost you this, but if you do it this way, it's actually going to cost you less than if you go through it this way. It's significant, and obviously being through it, significantly less. On a ballpark, like it's more out of my curiosity. What would both parties agree? How much would a financial agreement set you back?
So a financial agreement, so that's the one that doesn't go to the court.
Yes.
So and in a financial agreement, both people must have their own lawyer, which is different to the orders.
Yep.
I say typically 7 to 10 grand between both people. So the one lawyer will do the predominant drafting.
Yep.
And the other lawyer will check it and tweak for, things for their client. And their fees will be the, 3, 4. And the lawyer who's doing the drafting will be 6, 7. So as a ballpark, it's 10 grand-ish to do a financial agreement.
And then if you're amicable anyway, you just go, look, cool, let's just split that straight down the middle and go from it there, right? Because, and that's, okay, so that's actually not that bad considering if you had to go the other alternative option and you don't do that and then you're fighting it out, that's more like a minimum of 10 grand each anyway, and that's almost double. At least starting.
Yeah, so we tell people to head off to a mediation, which is sort of we're not resolving this by way of negotiation between themselves or through lawyers. Let's go off to a mediation. You're looking at anywhere from 15 to 30 grand per party, and up in court, 80, 100, 120 plus, depending on the complexity of the case.
Yep.
I had a client that I saw 5 years ago. Mum and dad gave the daughter $80,000 to buy a property. I spoke to them at that time about doing a financial agreement, and getting that money formalised back to mum and dad, decided not to proceed. The daughter has now separated from her husband. The property has gone up substantially in value.
Like every other property.
Like every other property.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at paying out the husband hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he has come forward and said, well, no, I don't think that's a loan. I didn't know we ever had to pay it back.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, you know, $10,000 5 years ago, yes, it's a lot of money. Not for a second do I think that's not a lot of money. It's essentially an insurance policy.
Yep. Well, you know, just come back to that point. Sorry, I just forgot to ask before. Because banks sometimes just want a gift letter, right? Saying that this is not a payable loan, so that's in writing. But can they come back afterwards to you and say, hey, we want to formalise it? Or is that too late?
No.
Yep. You can formalise it after the loan's approved and stuff like that as well. Yeah, cool. I had another question for you. So another one another little thing, having properties and trusts. You must get I think 2 weeks ago I asked you about this for another client of mine. You know, properties and trust, properties and super, things like that, SMSF. Is there any is there really any protection for people that have got properties and trusts?
Short answer is no.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
No.
There you go. Doesn't protect you. You heard it here, right? You know, Finances Property, that podcast. Doesn't matter if your property's in a trust, it still doesn't protect you from the property pool.
I won't bore you with all the legal case law that tells us about that. Short answer is it comes down to control.
Yeah.
So who's actually controlling the assets within the trust? And 99% of the time, it's husband and wife, husband or wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether they be individual trustees or directors of the corporate trustee,
Exactly.
It's still related. It's still the control. It's still in the pool. It's not a third party, in other words.
One of the terms that comes up in the judgments, which is what the judges write, is that trust a mere puppet of the person?
Yeah, it's just a vehicle that they're driving to better protect their assets or,
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. There you go. What other quirky things have you seen that people think that they're not protected from? You know, like trust is one of them. Is there anything else they think that, oh no, well that's not part of it, or
cash in boxes, literally under beds, buried in backyards, given to
you've
family
had a client
members.
that's buried money in their backyard?
Yes, and then asked
Pablo
me,
Escobar or something, right?
yeah, and then asked me if it is has to be disclosed. It has to be disclosed. Is the short answer.
Yeah, so you can't hide things.
No, you can't hide things.
Yeah, wow. Well, I got to ask. Hang on, was it in a barrel? Like, how was it buried in the backyard? Hopefully, it was preserved.
No, in like a tin box.
Oh, like a safety deposit box that
Yeah.
you see.
Like, and dug up dirt in the backyard. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
All I'm picturing is the episode from Narcos when they Pablo Escobar put his cash in the barrels and all the rats came in and ate it all and they decomposed it. So that's all I'm picturing right now. That's crazy. What other stuff like assets, things like cars and things like I think you was talking about a car
the Porsche,
or something. The
Porsche.
Porsche.
I've got an issue. Porsches don't seem like a great financial investment. No, it's not financial advice, by the way.
No, it's not. None of this is financial or legal advice, anyone. We'll get to that later. Yeah.
I was just thinking of something. What was it? It'll come to me. Cars come up. Cars, the easiest way to deal with cars is we just get them valued.
Yeah.
Or go on Redbook and if you've got a family lawyer on the other side who typically practices in family law, they'll happily say, yep, great, let's not end up in an argument about cars or cutlery sets. That comes up quite a bit as well. Yeah.
So it's just a minefield of memes come up. But yeah, that's crazy because I think, you're right. Like we're going back to the whole emotional side of it. It's a very traumatic traumatic event. No one wants to go through, because let's face it, no one wants to come and see you for a separation, right? But you're a necessary part of the process. Now you're talking about, going to, court and stuff like that. But there are so many steps before you even get to court, right?
So many.
The cost to actually get to court, you might as well just try and do stuff outside of court and just, you're not together, you not want to be together for a reason, just separate. So
so something I do, and I think it's unique with family lawyers, I talk about something which is called the get it done tax. So
okay, that's really good. That's a get it done tax. Listen up. This is the get it done tax.
Get it done tax, which is, okay, if we go to court, I think this is what you'll get in terms of my advice is this is what the settlement will look like. It's going to cost you this much. Let's pull back, take all the emotion out of it and look at it, the mathematics of it. All right, how far are those numbers apart? If we're, particularly say it's less than 100 grand, as in we're going to go to court for you to try and get something less than 100 grand more, that's definitely a get it done tax territory.
Yep.
Because going to court is incredibly traumatic and horrific and will change the trajectory of your life.
And it also costs a lot of money.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's more there as a deterrent. I feel it's more of no one wants you to go to court.
Yeah.
And that's why they make it so hard to get there, right?
But the court is there. Like if you've got a case where someone is just refusing to negotiate, refusing to give you any documentation, refusing to get out of a property, all of these things, and the option is go to court to get something versus nothing. Well, then unfortunately, that's your only option at that point. Yeah. But that's why it's there.
Yeah, you're pretty much backed into a corner. That's where you have to go.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So how do, thinking about all the doom and gloom, right? Like all that stuff, just let's park it aside. How do people better protect themselves? Like, what do you suggest?
So financial agreements.
Yep.
At the beginning of a relationship, during a relationship, we have a really lovely way of negotiating those agreements, which is trying to keep the legal letters to a minimum. It's nothing quite like seeing an email in your inbox from a lawyer. It's definitely puts your blood pressure up.
Yep.
So we keep that to a minimum. We do lots over the phone, meetings. That's definitely a way to protect yourself. Getting advice early.
I think that's the running common theme in my podcast at the moment is getting advice before you need.
Yep. Yeah. I see a lot of people that are contemplating a separation or feel like it's on the cards and just want to see where the chips will land.
Yeah.
So and then, at that point, it's about getting yourself set up. We do a lot of safety planning for people in domestically violent situations.
Yeah, that would be nasty.
Yeah, that's scary work. That's not the right word. It's confronting work that's still so prolific in our community, but it is
so prevalent. It is not
any socioeconomic subset, or it just cuts right through all of that. So we definitely do quite a bit of that as well. So early advice is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Cool. Get prepared, get the advice, have a conversation.
Yep.
Yep. Not with your next door neighbour or your best friend, because they're probably not going to really be able to help you and there's too much emotion in that.
Yeah.
Get someone that's independent, get that independent, unbiased advice based on facts.
100%.
Sound about right? Yeah.
Sounds exactly right.
And don't think you can bury your money in the backyard and get away with it. We'll find it. No. Hey, look, really, really appreciate your time, knowledge and expertise. I'm sure there's more stuff we can talk about, and we probably will, because we might get you back on to talk about more unique situations and what's been happening and how better protect yourself. But how does one find? I'm sure you've got lots of education pieces out there. How does one find the law people?
So best way is either jump on the website, so www.thelawpeople.com.au, and on there's a direct link to book in for a initial consult, which is complimentary. Shoot me an email, Jill.Johnston at The Law People, any of our team, more than happy to help.
Yep, cool. Are you on Instagram?
No.
Oh no, how do we get this out to you? But you're on LinkedIn, right?
LinkedIn,
yep.
absolutely fairly active on LinkedIn.
You might need to sort out some Instagram stuff, right?
It's on my... despite having 3 teenage daughters, I am not very tech savvy.
You'd think you'd be able to hire one of them to hey, run my Instagram, right?
Careful, I'm not letting them listen to this. They'll come to me with a business idea.
Oh, we can cut that out. No. Well, I know someone that could probably help you, so I might introduce you to them later. So, he's only sitting over there. But no, look, definitely, I think you guys I think there's a bit of lack of education as well for what you actually do, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted you on there. My network, your network, and just the greater community. Really appreciate you coming out here today. I know you're busy, but all the information on this podcast, here's my disclaimer, is very general in nature, doesn't take into account your current situation. If you do need advice, family law advice or any mortgage services or financial advice relating to mortgages, please contact me or contact Jill or the professional in that field. The other thing that we don't do on this podcast is we don't advertise and we don't get paid. We don't pay for advertising. It is free. We're here to support and empower financial legacies for generations. Have a look at thelawpeople.com.au's website. I'm sure there's a lot of education on there. If you need to get a hold of them, please do. Jill is on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. LinkedIn Dion Fernandes, Instagram at Dion Finance Specialist, and this podcast at Finance This Property That Podcast. It's on Apple, Spotify, everywhere else that runs podcasts, but also on YouTube for the video if you like looking. You're a visual person. But again, thank you.
Thank you
very much. Appreciate it. And we'll see everyone on the next episode.